there's another remake that people have been talking about for a while that's been on a rumor mill for quite some time, but apparently there was some news that it's really happening, and it's this fucking game. Apparently they're remaking Metal Gear Solid 3, and apparently it's gonna show up this summer. Not released this summer. Apparently it's gonna be announced, and I'm just like, really? Apparently there's been some deals happening in the background between Sony and Konami and some other game development company, where they're planning on not just remaking and revitalizing the Metal Gear Solid series, but Castlevania as well, and any fucking game, any big game, like Silent Hill as well. Now, I don't have a problem with Metal Gear Solid 3. In my opinion, it's arguably the best in the series. You can say 1 is really good, 2 is kind of the weird one that not a lot of people love or enjoy. I loved it. 2 is my personal favorite. Metal Gear Solid 4, why the fuck is that still on the PlayStation? Why hasn't it received any modern any modern port? I'm still confused by that. I'm sick of tired of people saying, well, it's because of the mechanics and the system and Konami and everything else. I'm like, just do it. Just somebody do it. People will buy it. People will play it. I guarantee it. With all this excitement of remakes and shit like that happening, I'm surprised that they went with this one and not actually Metal Gear Solid 1. But I've been reminded on Twitter that, well, they're probably remaking Part 3 because it's technically the first game in terms of the chronological timeline. It's the game where you play as Big Boss, and we get to learn about his story and how it sets up for how he gets cloned and all this other bullshit. The only question I have, if this rumor's true, and apparently people are really excited about it, who the fuck is making this game? Who's making it? Sony is getting the first rights to it. I mean, not the first rights. They're getting the exclusive rights to it. Meaning, it's kind of going to be like a Final Fantasy VII Remake situation, where Final Fantasy VII Remake first came out on PlayStation. Over time, it came out on PC and shit like that. So that's the only thing I'm kind of thinking, who the fuck is making this game? Is Blue Point making this game again? It's the only real company I can think of that could potentially be working on Metal Gear Solid 3, for the simple fact that they are the ones who actually made... Who remembers that Metal Gear Solid collection where I think it was MGS2, it was Snake Eater and Peace Walker, which was a weird sort of collection, like really weird that they did that. And I played the fuck out of that collection for the record. But they actually, that was like one of their like bigger first projects that are not a lot of people I think even remember that Blue Point worked on that shit. They didn't do anything crazy. I think the game runs on 60 and they made like some slight graphical improvements. Nothing like mind-blowing. It wasn't anything like, you know, the Shadow of the Colossus remake or anything like, or remaster. It wasn't anything like that. So I'm just wondering, like, are they just, what route are they gonna go? Is this going to be like a pure ass remake where like they're remaking everything from the top, you know, or from the bottom, I guess, from the bottom up, right? New mechanics, not even new characters, but like, I'm just like, what do you do with this game? How do you remake it? It's just like, is it that they're just purely gonna remake it and it's gonna remain relatively faithful to the original Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater game? Where it plays exactly the same, but it looks like it's like next gen shit. You know what I'm saying? Which honestly, that would be fucking badass. But then there's other logistics. Who's gonna voice the actors? Who the fuck is gonna play Solid Snake? Right? Like, who's doing that? Is Hideo Kojima okay with this? Right? I guess that doesn't matter because he doesn't even own Metal Gear. He just directed the games, right? And more or less, they were his ideas along with his team. Who then? Oscar Isaac? I mean, at this point, he might as fucking well, since that movie's not coming out, right? That movie's not... Where the fuck is that film? We never even heard of it. There's just too many logistics behind, like, who the fuck is gonna do this? Like, I can see a world where David Hayter reprises Solid Snake for two reasons. He maybe feels like, I haven't done this character in a long time, and I kind of want to do it again, right? Maybe it might be a nice little paycheck. I don't know. It's also his favorite iteration of not Solid Snake. It's his favorite iteration of Snake, right? He also said he enjoyed being like a prime Snake character, right? Because when he played him in 1, you know, this was like retired Solid Snake, right? This was like Snake who was retired, living in Alaska, and now he's back to do he basically got dragged into this thing. And then Metal Gear Solid 4, well, MGS2, he wasn't even the fucking star. He wasn't. You got to play with him for 1 mission, and then you got to play as Raiden, and that's it. And then you don't see him again until the end, literally the end. And you don't really get to play as Solid Snake until Metal Gear Solid 2 Substance for the fucking Xbox comes out, where you can actually play as him, you know, while, you know, all this stuff happening in the big shell or whatever. And then 4 comes out, and then he's old Snake. So I would think, and, you know, obviously, you know, Hideo Kojima and David Hayter's relationship has been patched. There was a moment, there was a time where those two people didn't really see eye to eye, or I don't want to say they didn't like each other, but they definitely weren't on talking terms. I think that's been squashed for quite a long time. So I can see whoever the fuck is working on this shit, saying like, hey, we want David Hayter to reprise his role as Big Boss or as Snake. I'd be down for that, right? And I think he would too. I also wouldn't be surprised if they didn't get David Hayter, and it's just this new fucking, you know, it's some dude, some person, and that, yeah, you know, that's the same for all the other characters that are a part of that game, right? I think like you can replace some of them, in my opinion. I feel like you can, but it's, man, how do you replace Big Boss? Now I know a lot of people really loved Kiefer Sutherland. I thought he was great as Big Boss in The Phantom Pain. Who does the voice in Smash? That was David Hayter. They got him to do it. That was him. So like I said, man, I think it's possible. I think it can happen. I think it could definitely happen. It's just like, there's so many weird directions this shit can go. Like, it doesn't make sense, you know? And I get that Silent Hill 2 remake was announced. We don't know if that game is going to be good. We don't know if that game is actually going to be, you know, solid and it's polished and everything else. We don't know yet. But man, what a weird fucking anomaly, huh? Like, I get that there's remakes coming out left and right, and for the most part, I'd say there's a pretty high percentage. Most of the remakes that have existed are really good. But I would have loved to see a remake of Metal Gear Solid 1. And I get it. I understand that Metal Gear Solid 1 was technically remade for the GameCube. That was a fucking long-ass time ago. What was that, chat? That was like 2000... It was like 05? That was like 05, right? That was 18 years ago. It's been almost 20 years. It probably came out a little bit later than that. 2004. It's been almost 20 years since that fucking game. And I don't give a fuck what anyone says. Even though it was a remake, it was basically fucking Metal Gear Solid 1 with just Metal Gear Solid 2 mechanics and art style. That's all it was. So to me personally, I think it would have been cool if they started with Metal Gear Solid 1. But at the same time, I can see where, you know, the whole chronological order thing takes precedent in this particular situation. I just don't know, you know? The point is, there's a Metal Gear Solid game coming out. No one knows exactly what it is, and that it's going to be remade. We don't know if it's going to be a new engine. We don't know if it's just going to be like a remake remaster, which is kind of like what Bluepoint does, right? They're the ones who are good at doing remake remasters, just like Demon's Souls, Shadow of the Colossus, and they technically have worked with Konami in the past. They have. I would think they still have that good relationship with Konami. So that's the only people I can see working on that game. It's just weird. It's really weird. Chat, y'all don't think that shit's weird? Because my thing is, it's like, okay, if you're gonna do Metal Gear Solid, you're touching a very sacred game. Am I wrong for saying that? Like, everybody kind of knows what Metal Gear is, in my opinion. It's one of the most decorated video game franchises of all time. Am I wrong in saying that? I feel like that's okay to say. I feel like that's appropriate for a game like Metal Gear. So, I don't know. I'm concerned, and I'm a little nervous, and I'm just hoping that whatever is announced, we'll see what happens.